Hi guys, it's Shisha and you're listening to the On The Go podcast. Today we're diving into the journey of turning a business idea into reality with Joe Ayite, a seasoned entrepreneur and finance expert. Joe started as an auditor at Deloitte in 1999, mastering financial analysis and business systems. He later became a financial controller and took on key finance and IT roles across multiple companies. In 2006, Joe's entrepreneurial spirit sparked a side hustle, which he balanced with his career until 2012, when he left the corporate world to pursue business ownership full time. Now, as the founder of a thriving software company, Joe leverages his financial expertise to drive innovation, exemplifying persistence, strategic thinking, and calculated risk taking. And we're looking forward to diving into his story. Hi, Joe. Welcome to the On The Go podcast. Thank you so much for finally accepting our invitation to be on this podcast, because you've been in business for a number of years, gone through a number of transitions from starting your business or having a 9-to-5 job and starting your venture as a side hustle and then going full on into your business. And so you are really the perfect person for us to talk about taking a business idea from concept to launch. So just to get straight into it, every great business starts with an idea. So can you take us back to the moment when your idea first sparked and what inspired it?
Right. Thank you for inviting me. My journey started sort of around 1999 at Deloitte. However, I quickly realized that the corporate world wasn't for me. I was there for about 5.5 years, and then I transitioned into industry. But the entrepreneurial itch never faded. And by 2006, I started a side hustle. Ironically, it was inspired by my pregnant wife's craving for kenke. If you don't know what that is, it's a fermented corn dumpling.
Okay.
However, the real turning point came around about 2011 when I discovered an innovative EPOS solution.
And what's an
seen
EPOS?
firsthand.
Sorry to interrupt.
Sorry?
What's EPOS? EPOS.
The electronic point of sale system.
Okay.
Sort of till systems used in shops and things like that.
Okay.
So I discovered a very innovative, modern, sort of iPad-based EPOS solution. And I'd seen firsthand how cloud computing, which was still a relatively new concept, was reshaping whole industries. So I basically signed up, with software vendors as a reseller. And then, I added on, services, hardware, support, and stuff like that. Okay. So I was basically paid a recurring commission for signing up clients.
Okay.
And just added stuff on top of that, basically. So I think it wasn't so much that it was an idea. I just realized that there was a shift happening, and there was a great opportunity, and I just sort of jumped in.
So, well, that's interesting, because many people have ideas, they have great ideas, but they never act on them. So what was the very first step you took to turn your vision into something real?
Yeah, I think Nike's slogan says it best. Just do it.
Do it.
Because anything great goes through a process of iteration. No ideas are perfect. And the first steps would be to do some market research.
Okay.
Other people who might pay for, your solution. Do you have a prototype you can show friends? Get some feedback. Because basically, taking action is what separates dreamers from doers. So a dream is not enough. A plan is not enough. A vision is not enough. A goal is not enough. You have to take action and learn as you go along.
What was the first step you took with that? I mean, yes, there was the market research, but in terms of just getting that started? Was the market research the first thing? Is this something you would tell sort of our audience if they're in that the very beginning stages, that before they even do anything?
Yeah.
What's
In my case, the market research came later.
okay?
The first thing was to see if I could find customers, because I didn't have to create the solution from scratch. I was selling an existing solution.
Got it.
Like I said, there was a shift from very bulky, very cumbersome legacy systems to very modern cloud-based,
Yeah.
nimble systems. And so there's a whole shift happening, and there were lots of, shops and, outfits had no idea how to transition. So clearly there was a problem. Probably hundreds of thousands of potential clients.
Yes.
And so I had to just see if I could find real customers who would pay for the services. Yeah.
Okay, so I imagine like the journey of doing that venture wasn't smooth sailing. So what was the one major roadblock that you faced early on, and how did you push through it? Because I sometimes think that beginning stages can be quite delicate.
Well, I think lack of funding is a big one. Because as soon as I realized that I could turn that to a business, I quit my job because I was always looking for an excuse to do that.
Okay.
And I thought it was the right time. So lack of funding was an issue starting out, and also balancing multiple roles because you had to do product or service development, marketing, finance, everything. And I think that in my view, the only way you can overcome those challenges is just sheer persistence. Don't take no for an answer. You keep trying until you make it. So that's an attitude, that's a mindset that can help you to overcome any challenge.
I'd like us to, maybe not now, but later on, to delve into the whole quitting your job. Quitting your job thing. I think there has to be wisdom in it, because I think one of my videos I talked about the fact that don't quit your job yet. There are obviously steps and decisions to make with regards to that. But in your situation, how soon did you quit your job? Because you just said quit your job so that people don't hear it and think, okay, this is where I am, I'll do it.
Yeah, I think that one of the most important lessons I've learned, one of the most important things I came across was that just taking the leap, I don't advise that people do that, in the same way I did. If I have to start over, I'll do it different. I'll do the same thing, but differently. We can tease that out a bit. But it was a journey of self-discovery. But what I've realized is that there's something on the inside of everybody, okay, especially people who think or believe that they ought to be entrepreneurs. And the only way you can find that out is pressure and challenges. There's no other way. The only way you know what a sponge contains is when you apply pressure on it, when you squeeze it, whether it's water or soap or whatever's in there will come out. So if we shy away from problems, there's no way we can become entrepreneurs. So therefore, being an entrepreneur is an art of wrestling with, and dealing with problems and figuring out ways to solve them. That's the journey. That's what it is. And so, even though I would not necessarily advise people to quit their job until they're sure, in my case, I there's a saying, you can jump the bridge and grow your wings on your way down. One of my favorite quotes, So, I don't think there's an ideal set of circumstances. Obviously, if you have, something significant saved before you venture out, that's always helpful.
So this leads to my next question. So did you have, were there any moments of self-doubt where you thought maybe this won't work? And if so, how did you overcome that mindset?
Okay, I think that, yes, for real, definitely. There'll be times when, obviously, if what you're doing is not working, even though you might feel, quote unquote, called and very passionate, if you're not getting results and you can't pay bills, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Will this work? Will I make it? I think that, in my opinion, the best way to overcome that is to keep your focus on what you can do. Don't spend too much time on what you don't have and what you can't do. Because That's why some people don't start out in the first place. I don't have enough money. You don't need capital to start a business. You need to be able to communicate a solution.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be able to test that out whether people will pay for it. You have to be able to determine, for example, whether there are enough people in the world or in a geographical area who will be willing to pay for that.
Yes. Okay. So once you had the idea, what were the key steps you took to validate it? And how did you know that there was a real demand for what you were building, for what you wanted to market?
I think the easiest way is to talk to potential customers.
Okay.
If you come up with some special dog dessert, you have to talk to dog owners and find out what they think, because as you get feedback, as you talk to people, you'll be able to figure out whether it's the idea can be turned into a viable business or not. The other thing is also to get an MPV, a minimal viable product.
Okay.
Can you create a solution, even if it's just a sketch or a prototype, that can show how you solve the problem? It might be a real product that can be used, or it might just be a drawing or a sketch or some design of some kind. But you've got to be able to communicate both the problem you're solving and how
you do
you
it.
intend to solve it.
Yeah. So could it be like one of those, sometimes in supermarkets you have just people handing out like samples, or even in restaurants you see people handing out like samples to see whether people will like it and to get that kind of feedback. Is that what you mean by the minimal viable product, to see if there's an interest in that? So you start with that kind of like testing.
Well, not necessarily, because I would assume that in a supermarket scenario, it's a finished product that works.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Minimum viable product is the most basic form of the solution.
Okay.
Not necessarily complete.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Where you spend as little as possible on it. Because you're likely to start out with very well. If you have a grandpa who willed you, millions, that'd be great. But most people start out with almost nothing.
Yes.
They're trying to transition from a job that they don't like very much to creating something for themselves. So so there's a most basic form of the solution, and it can be in any form, so long as it helps you to communicate both the problem you're solving and how you're solving it. It tick the boxes. Yes.
Okay. So actually, this leads me on to what you talked about. We talked a bit about funding, which is a huge part of turning an idea into reality. So for you, did you bootstrap? Did you seek investors, or did you take another route? And also, that's the first question. And also, the second baby question is, what advice would you give to someone who's trying to figure out how to fund their startup?
Yeah, okay. I did a lot of bootstrapping, and currently, it's all self-funded. I tried loans, paying them off. I didn't get the result I wanted. I also tried investors. It also didn't work the way I wanted, because I talked about you're on a journey of self-discovery. I have discovered back then that the most important thing to me is freedom. So an investor means that somebody, gives you some money up front and typically takes a stake in your business. 40%, 50%, whatever. It's agreed. They usually will have a seat on the board, or they have some control over the business.
Yes.
And that can create pressure. Bring the report. How is it doing? Why is sales down? And all of that. And there's a place for that for people who have no other choice, or for certain industry. If you're going to shipbuilding, you're going to need lots of money, lots of investors. So I sort of concluded that for me, bootstrapping and self-funding is what works.
Yeah. Okay.
If push comes to shove, loans, because the way loans work is that you pay it back, and the person you borrow from doesn't have an interest in the business.
Yeah. Okay.
You don't control the business, so you still keep, a majority share of all of the shares of the business. Maintain control, so you can drive the business at your own pace. It depends on what's important to you, basically.
So if someone was coming to you, for example, and just say, okay, this is my business, and maybe they're in the first 4 years of their business, or even in the first year, would you, and they were talking, thinking about funding, would you be saying, okay, and they're saying, oh, I'm thinking of starting a loan because without, or even getting, seeking investors because maybe without this I need maybe 5,000 or 10,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Would you, obviously, you're not giving you any kind of financial advice,
Mm.
and they just said, I need your opinion, where would you be leading them to? Would it be more seeking investors? Would it be loan, or would it be bootstrapping? Or would it be a case of where you're telling them you have to have maybe qualifiers? Depends
Yeah.
on the kind of business, depends on the kind of person you
Yes.
are, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that first and foremost, it depends on what's important to you.
Mm.
In my case, freedom is everything. So bootstrapping is a route,
Mm.
and obviously I'm biased. So in terms of funding, there's two broad categories. You either raise from investors or from creditors. So borrowing from the bank or anybody
Yeah.
else who's willing
Yeah.
to lend.
Yeah.
You know, so it's equity versus debt.
Yeah.
Debt, once you pay it back, that's it. They
That's
don't
it.
have any stake in the business.
Yeah.
Equity, they have an ongoing stake in the business,
Mm.
probably a seat on the board, and contribute to the direction of the business.
Mm.
So I suppose it would depend on what they're trying to achieve in terms of what service or products they've got, or what business they are in, and what their goals are, and what's important to them. For example, if like I said, talked about shipbuilding, if it's something that big, you
Mm.
definitely need some kind of investment.
Investment. Yeah.
Yeah, so it would depend on those factors.
Mm.
But obviously, I'm biased, towards bootstrapping and borrowing rather than, getting investment. Because I tried it and I realized that, look, freedom is
Well,
is the reason why I quit my job, to be free and to work in my pajamas.
so because, yeah, I suppose potentially the having an investor could be, one could also see it as having some sort of employer over you, because to a certain extent they might
Yes,
dictate certain things because they've invested their own, their hard-earned money in it, and they
yes,
would want some returns, and for you to get certain returns, they might expect you to do certain things that you may
exactly,
not be comfortable with, or you may say, look, I've left a 9 to 5 job because of certain things. Okay. Okay.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, precisely, because we feel like we left a form of 9 to 5 to another form of 9 to 5.
Nine to
So
five. Yeah. No, that
yeah,
that's
so you
very
want to
much.
consider
Yeah.
all of that and make sure that,
Mm,
you're doing what really
mm,
works for you.
mm.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about execution. What was the most challenging part of actually launching your business?
Finding customers, probably the toughest.
Really?
Every early stage business
Yeah.
often, struggles with marketing and,
Yeah.
providing enough value to attract, the first customers.
Mm,
Because I suppose that once you're able to break that, and begin to get referrals, especially, then you get more confident that, you're solving a problem, and you're offering value, and so on and so forth. So I think that probably that's the toughest,
yeah.
getting people to believe, because you believe in your own dreams. They look
Yeah.
perfect and all of that.
Yes.
But when the rubber hits the road,
You
oftentimes
know.
it's a different
Yeah.
story. That's why more than 95% of startups fail, because the reality can be quite different from the dream.
From the dream, right? Which,
Yeah,
yeah, and I think what I find that with entrepreneurship, the one thing I feel that people don't talk about as much, and you're not really prepared for, is just
mm,
the emotional roller coaster, of being
yeah,
an entrepreneur. And I feel as if it brings out things in you that you didn't know you had, whether it's
yeah.
doubt, whether it's fear. So how has the journey,
Mm.
this your entrepreneurial journey, how has it changed you as a person? And also, what did you learn about yourself, or what have you learned about yourself that you didn't expect in your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah. So the first business. I mean, I tried something in my, when I was a teenager. That was a long time ago. But the first thing I tried, sort of around 2006, was selling this dumpling thing. I discovered that it was made in a factory, which is unusual. We befriended the manufacturer, and then we started distributing to shops.
What, dumpling?
Okay, dumpling, the kenke thing.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so we're surprised that it could be produced in a factory, packaged nicely, and all of that. Quite fascinating at the time. And we tried, to distribute. We did distribute even abroad. We did all kinds of stuff with
Oh
it.
wow. Okay.
But then I discovered that, and I tried other products, food
Mm.
products, hair extensions. I've tried almost
Wait,
everything, to be
wait,
honest.
wait. You did hair extensions.
I've sold hair extensions. I
You
had
sold
customers
hair
in
extensions.
France, in France, and in all kinds of strange places. The Netherlands,
Oh wow.
yeah, I've done all kinds of
Why haven't
stuff.
I seen this in your bio that you sold hair extensions?
You said it was too long. You said it was too long.
It would have been good to say. And he also had a hair extension business. Okay, yeah. Sorry, continue.
Yeah, yeah. But I didn't find fulfillment. I didn't know that's what it was at the time. But
Mm,
I I always stopped and started something different. Okay. Again, I mentioned being on a journey of self-discovery. The trick is to discover who you truly are,
mm,
and anything that you build on top of that will work eventually. Okay, because birds
mm,
are born to fly,
mm.
and they discover that with the help of their mother, over time. But flying is in their DNA. So there's something in
Yeah,
your DNA, something in my DNA that I have
yeah.
to discover. And I did discover what that was. It took a
Mm,
while of trying to sell stuff, and I wasn't fulfilled. And then I went into e-commerce. I built my first e-commerce website 2008. It wasn't a
okay.
big thing even then,
Mm,
that far back. 2008, had one work in 2009, also selling stuff. I was selling kenke, palm oil, hair extensions, all kinds of stuff. And then I discovered that I didn't enjoy the selling of the products,
okay.
but I enjoyed building the website and building the systems. So I discovered that
Mm,
systems is my thing. In fact, when I started working in Deloitte in 1999,
yes.
that's when I just fell in love with systems, even though it was a accountancy audit sort of practice, an international global one.
Yes.
You know, I was always fascinated about any kind of systems, how things were done, whether
Yeah.
it was computerized or not.
Yeah.
That's my thing.
Yeah.
So that's been in my DNA.
Mm,
Okay. I took
mm,
selling stuff and trying to do, all these things to discover that fundamentally this is who I am.
yeah. Yeah.
You know, whether it's computer, even in my home, I'm always thinking about systems, how anything is done. So I discovered who I was.
Mm,
And therefore, obviously, when the opportunity came, I recognized it because I didn't have to learn to fly, really. You
mm,
can say learn to fly, but you were born to fly.
yeah.
So it's more natural,
Yeah.
If you can do something and enjoy doing it without being, even when you're not paid, that's probably what you're born to do.
Yeah.
So it ends up from doing to being, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So what you do becomes just being yourself, So when you get to a place in business where you can express yourself, who you truly are, you've discovered yourself.
That's actually
I hope I
interesting.
answered the question.
And no, you have, and quite philosophical.
Oh my gosh.
But but no, I was just thinking about, what, especially what you said about, you know, entrepreneurship being a discovery, a self-discovery, right?
Mm,
And then, you mentioned that you started off selling all these different things and you realized that you didn't find that joy in selling, and but it was more in the systems. Okay. And the
yeah,
thing about, and I think the thing that, just in terms of that journey, the things that I think frustrates people, and because people feel they do this and maybe they do one thing and it fails, they try so many things and it fails, and sometimes there is
yeah,
and then it's at that stage or those stages that people just give up because they feel as if, maybe they're not meant to do this. So how do you speak, how would you speak to people who maybe at the beginning stages of that, and maybe they're feeling like there are a number of things that they love, but they still haven't yet discovered it. That period of knowing that they're on to, they have something to give, but they're not quite sure. I suppose for me is like, so when will I get to that stage? When will I get to that? Okay, it's systems. Like for you, you said you
Right.
understood that it wasn't so much marketing, it was systems, and so you got it. You got to that stage. So,
Right.
what of people that feel as if they still haven't figured it out? Are you
Mm,
saying that they should just stay in that stage of trying different
mm,
things until something clicks? When will that
mm.
thing click? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, let's try and tease that out. So I think that we need to have a mindset that says that failure is okay. Failure is not final. Failure is feedback. Depending on what culture you come from, failure from school can be frowned upon.
Yeah.
Okay? And so when people fail, what they are thinking is the same as like failing my exam. And my dad and my mom didn't quite like that.
Yeah.
But I know, for example, there are cultures where they don't have a word for failure. They don't have it. Maybe
Can I change
they
my
have it. Yeah,
culture
the
to
problem
that
is
culture?
learning. Sorry.
I said, can I change my culture to that culture?
Yeah. So the cultural influences are really important. How we're shaped.
Mm,
How we're shaped. You have to always be at the top of the class and
yeah.
so forth. Great, nice.
Yeah.
But I think that if we get to understand, so if I was advising somebody, I'll get them to understand is failure is actually feedback. It is 999 ways of how not to make a light bulb,
Yeah.
but we want the one way of how to make a
You
light
want the
bulb. And
yeah.
in life, it doesn't happen.
Okay. Yeah.
So the key is a commitment to a process. I'm in,
Mm,
it's like a marriage. I'm in, and that's all there is,
that's it.
that's it. In. There are no exits. You
Yeah.
don't exit as the earliest sign of trouble. So
Mm,
it is a mindset that
hmm.
'cause the reason why you can have that mindset is that deep down you can offer more. There's something down there. I don't know what that is.
Mm,
You know,
mm.
I see glimpses of a coming attraction, but I'm not quite
You're not.
sure.
Yeah.
I feel that I'm going to have more than I need to abound in every good work,
Yeah.
like the scripture says, but I'm not quite sure what that is.
Mm,
What you do is to commit to a process, that will give you a lot of challenges. And that's what people don't like to do that. People don't like to think of it that way. Think, oh, well, I'm going to sow a seed, I'm going to invest and I'll make millions. That's what they're thinking. They don't think,
let me sow a seed. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So
go ahead.
no, I just, when you say you commit to a process, so what does that look like? So what do you mean by commit to a process?
So we all have something on the inside of
Yeah.
us, call it what you may, that is pointing where we should be headed.
Yes.
Everybody, some people just like children. They don't know why,
Yeah.
but they just love. I don't know why I love systems. I'm just wired like that.
Mm,
So that's a good starting point. That this is who I am. Generally,
mm,
I like this and that, and I
mm.
feel passionate about that. You know,
Yeah.
or I get very upset about certain problems. It's a sign too. But it's one of the strongest signs.
Yeah.
I just hate poverty. You don't even want to know. You know, so you gravitate towards that.
Mm, yeah.
Trust me. In any direction, it is not. God is so good. This is not a particular formula. You just have to. If you like children, volunteer at a daycare or something.
Yeah.
You would discover something
Yeah. Yeah.
extra, and you build on that.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to get your hands dirty
Yeah.
and to be on that journey of discovery.
Yeah.
So once you figure out who you are, the
Mm.
sky is not the limit.
Oh, I like that. The sky's not the limit. Yeah. I think,
They
yeah, you're
say the
right.
sky is not.
Because it's everyone wants it quick. You want that
No,
solution. You want to find that thing, that
no,
process. You want to find it quickly,
it
but
doesn't happen.
it's really a process of investigation of possibly trial and
Yes,
error, which really
yeah,
is what
yeah.
entrepreneurship is like.
Iteration. You try stuff.
Mm,
But in a certain direction. I've always loved computers, so most of the stuff I've done is around that. I've sold other people's software. I've tried. Contracts have been cancelled on me, and I've seen all kinds of stuff. But
Wow.
that's
That- That's a
it's
whole
good. The
other
next day, I
story of
started building my
the
own.
hardship involved in
Yeah,
entrepreneurship.
look, hardship is good for you. Nobody's hardship is good for you because you start thinking, you start using your faculties.
Mm,
What can I do? I have to get out of this. I can't live like this. I feel there's more. You can't tap into that deeper reservoir that's on the inside if everything is hunky dory.
Monkey dory. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So you need pressure to succeed. You do.
We
You
don't
do.
want to hear that. Well, it's
Yeah,
true.
yeah, yeah. But I
True.
mean,
Yeah,
that's the truth. You
yeah.
need
It is. Hmm. So entrepreneurship, it can be lonely, can't it? It can definitely be lonely. So who or what has kept you grounded throughout the ups and downs? It can be lonely, and there are lots of ups and downs, as we've just said. So what
yes.
has kept you grounded just through the process of your journey?
I hope I have mastered the idea of focusing on what's important or what you can control, what you can do.
Okay, share,
Because
share. What do you mean?
thoughts,
What do you mean by master the control of what you can do? So can you just take
okay,
us through that process?
I can pay a particular bill
Okay.
and they're writing me letters, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's assume I'm just, making it up.
Yes.
They're writing me letters. It
Yeah.
happens to real entrepreneurs,
Yeah. Oh,
trust me.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Been there.
But there are 5 customers who have shown interest in my solution and I haven't spoken to them
Mm,
because I'm busy worrying about the bill I can pay.
mm,
Leave the bill alone and speak to those customers. Eventually, you'll be able to pay the bill. So, the power of focus, basically, focus on what you can do something about.
mm.
Because thoughts enter your head. There's a saying that you can't stop the birds from flying over your head.
Okay.
You can stop them from building a nest in your hair.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know, so you have to, the brain is a muscle. You have to exercise it. You have to practice focusing on what you can do something. So I use a very simple tool, a to-do list.
Mm.
So I've learned to become a slave to it. So
Okay.
instead of, yearly goals, which I have on my vision board and all of that, it's all great. But when the rubber hits the road, you get one day at a time. So if I win today and I get tomorrow and I win tomorrow and I win the next day, a year from now, I'll be winning. 10 years from now, I'll be winning. Just win every day. It's just focus on what you can control. Because you can't control 2027. We're in
Yeah.
2025.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's also one key. So you filter out all the distractions by focusing on what you can actually do something about.
Mm.
Talking about action, execution. What can I do? That's what I want to think about.
Mm.
What I can't do, when I can do something about it, we'll talk. I'll pay you £1 now. There's a 10,000. I'll pay you £1 now. A month from now, we'll see where we are at. But from now, I have to speak to those customers.
Mm.
I have to clinch that deal.
So literally
So focus.
practice focusing.
Key.
Because that's not,
Focus.
if you haven't done it before, if you're not used to it, that's not an easy thing to do. So
Absolutely.
just practice focusing on what you
practice.
can do.
And then you end up, the byproduct
Mm-hmm.
is that you live a stress-free life. You learn not to stress.
Yeah.
You learn. I have very little stress in my life, very little,
Oh, that's good.
because I've learned to focus on what
Yeah.
I can do.
Mm.
Because stress comes from worrying about what you can't change,
Yes.
or
Very
what you
true.
can change immediately,
Yes.
or maybe what you can't change ever. It doesn't really matter. But if you can't change it, then you don't think too much about it.
Yeah.
You might think about it, from time to, but don't dwell on it.
Mm.
Don't dwell on it.
Mm.
So I think that focus is the
Mm.
big key.
Mm.
Big
Focus.
key.
Focus. Okay, if you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice at the very beginning of your journey, what would it be?
Okay, so I would surround myself with people who have succeeded at what I'm trying to do. Not necessarily in the same industry,
Okay.
but people who are titans in the area that I'm trying to, colonize, if you will, early on.
Mm.
Because I realized that maybe I worked too hard. I had to fight too hard. It wasn't necessary.
Okay.
So if I had to do this again, if I had to do this over, I'd find a mentor, somebody who's already broken through, in the industry of interests, and attach myself to them, work for them for free. Yeah, whatever. If they need a butler, I'm there. Whatever they want,
Yeah.
anything that make them feel that you're offering value,
Yeah.
do it just to get close to them. Because look,
Mm.
just the air around people who have broken through, it's infectious. I mean that. Just be around them.
Mm.
When you're in the presence of quote unquote royalty,
Yeah.
you will see how
You'll
it's
see.
like. You will feel it and you will be inspired to fly, at least want to fly. Yeah, if I had to do this over, well, I did have some mentors along the line, not
Yeah.
online, not physical. If I had
Yeah.
to do this over, I'll place a greater emphasis on that because I know that I could fly much higher and could have
Mm.
done it. I mean, you have a feeling of what's on the inside. You didn't put it there, but you have a sense
Yeah.
who you are and how high you can fly.
Mm.
Everybody knows, and I feel that, maybe I was flying with sparrows instead of eagles, maybe. I feel that I should have found some eagles and jests,
Let's hope the
hanging.
sparrows never watch this.
Yeah. Seriously,
Oh wow.
yeah,
So even
eagles
if
only
they
fly
weren't
at
in
night.
your in the industry that you're the industry that you're in,
Yeah,
would you have still like gone back and said, okay, even if you're not in my industry, I will just be around you and soak up whatever is it maybe the ambition, the mindset of those of people that so it doesn't necessarily, I suppose my question is, it doesn't necessarily have to be people in your industry, but people who
correct.
are just on a higher level in terms of
Successful,
success, more
super
successful.
successful.
Yeah.
They have a mindset. It's a way they think.
Mm.
Everything.
Yes.
One of the things you discover that really wealthy people, they don't even talk about money. It's
They don't.
crazy. They don't.
They
They don't.
don't.
You
They
know.
don't.
You know.
They don't.
Somebody once said that poor people talk about money, rich people talk about things, my Bugatti and my things. Wealthy people talk about ideas, how to transform nations, and you know.
Hmm.
So poor people, money, save money,
Oh
you
my
know,
word.
get discounts, money. How can I get it cheaper? 1p off, you know, collecting points and you just,
Oh my
money.
word. Yeah.
But rich people, it's about stuff. Wealthy people, they don't even talk about
It's
money.
about
They talk about stuff,
ideas.
ideas, you know,
Yeah.
how to buy nations,
How, how to buy nations.
you know, yeah, big things, how to transform nations beyond their lifetime,
Yes. Yeah.
100-year plan.
Yeah. They think about
You
it's
know,
for them, it's legacy, isn't it? For them,
yes,
it's
it's
legacy.
thinking on a different level.
Yeah. Yeah. So if someone is listening and they're saying, I don't even know successful people, I don't know how I can reach successful people, what would you say to them?
If they are hungry enough, they will find a way.
Find a way.
So I would try and assess whether they're hungry enough. If you're hungry, you will find a way. People send, celebrities, for example, DMs and stuff. You can craft a message in a way that
Can
will catch it.
actually.
You can research them.
Social media has made it easier.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I have a language that I speak.
Mm.
I'm not being specific here, but I have a language that I speak. When somebody speaks that language, they get my attention.
Okay.
There are certain things that get my attention.
Yeah. There's certain words.
Yeah, or let's just say there's certain things I'm super interested in.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to say is that if you want to connect with somebody who is out of reach or seemingly out of reach, you want to reset it. If you've written a book, read it. You will get
Yes.
a sense of who
Yes.
they are.
Yes.
You have to get into their soul.
Yeah.
So, this person just is over the moon about flowers. So find a rare flower they haven't seen from a very obscure country
Oh, yeah.
and send them a message about it or something,
Yeah.
do something crazy.
Yeah. To get their attention. That's
Get
true.
their
And
attention.
social media has made it so much
Look, they are human.
easier.
They've got lots of them, but they are human.
Yes. That's true.
They've got a body, they've got a soul, they have a spirit. They're human.
Yes.
They're
So
human. It
guys,
may seem like, yeah.
There's no excuse. There's no excuse.
No excuse.
No excuse.
No excuses.
Okay, for our listeners who have a great idea but are afraid to take the first step, what's the one thing they can do today to move forward? What would
Okay.
you say?
First and foremost, I'll they need to understand that fear. Somebody's quote was fear is false evidence
Mm,
appearing
yeah.
real. It's a
Yeah.
figment of their imagination. It's not real.
Mm,
A very popular U.S. president. I can't remember whether
mm.
it was Teddy Roosevelt. That the only thing to fear is
It's
fear
fear
itself.
itself. Yeah.
Like you know, one of my favorite quotes is by Vincent Norman Peale. Says,
Mm.
"Shoot for the moon, and even if you miss, you will land among the
Way.
stars."
Yeah.
Among the stars. So have a big dream, but take
Mm,
small steps. Take small
mm.
steps. So even if you're afraid, still do it. Do something.
Yeah.
Take a step.
Yeah.
Do something.
Yeah.
The fear won't give you anything.
Mm. That's true. So do something and keep doing
Yeah.
something, as you say. Just have a list.
Until you discover
Have a list.
there's something better to do, and then
Yeah.
you switch.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the
That's
process of iteration. Yeah.
yes. So
You learn
as
you
we're
grow.
rounding up, what's the next thing for you in your business and your software business? And also because you're in software and in this age of AI and all the huge technological advances, how do you keep growing and innovating beyond your initial launch, but also beyond, say, today, beyond where your business is today? How do you keep growing and innovating in this age that we're in?
Yeah. So first and foremost, I did say that I believe in shooting for the moon.
Yes.
And not that, shooting for the moon. Yeah, even if you miss, you land among the stars.
Yes.
So aim very high, basically.
Yes.
So that always if it's something higher
Mm,
to reach for, it motivates you.
mm.
Um, the other thing I'd say is that sorry, what was the question again?
So what's the next thing for you and your software company,
Yes,
and how do you keep
yes,
growing,
yes,
especially now with
yes,
AI and all of that stuff and
yes,
innovating? How do you do that?
yes. So for me, I want to dominate my industry. Yeah,
I like that.
I don't want a piece of the pie. I don't even want the pie. I
Okay.
want to own the bakery.
You want
I want to own the bakery.
that's what I like to hear. That's how you dominate.
Yeah. People say, "Oh, I want a piece of the pie." No, I don't
No,
want a
you
piece of the
want to
pie.
own the
I
bakery.
don't want the pie. I want to own the bakery. So there's always more to reach for.
Yes.
Always. So I'm forced to grow and innovate. I'm thinking about AI and working with AI a lot.
Mm,
Because that's the next frontier.
it
That's the next
is.
frontier.
It
Now you
is.
can get so much done in so little time. It's
It is.
ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
incredible. You could write a book in a
In a
day.
day.
I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
So no more excuses. So yeah,
Oh
yeah.
wow, this is do you know what? Thank you so much. There are lots of gems that you've given us today, and really I'm very grateful, and it's been worth the harassment in a
I hope so.
in a non sort of not in an illegal way that I've been harassing you to come on this
Yes.
podcast
Always camera shy.
to for for you to just tell us your journey and just give us strategies and ideas to grow. So thank you so much for this. And guys, I know that you have learned a lot. So please, put your comments below if you have questions for Joe. Joe doesn't like, as someone that who's on the online, not online, technological software industry, he likes to keep things private. So if you send your comments and questions to him, I will definitely make sure he gets them. Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me, and it really has been worth it. And I hope you've enjoyed yourself.
I have. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Thank you so much. Bye.
Yes.
Guys, that's a wrap for today's episode. I hope you found our conversation with Joe Aite insightful and inspiring. Remember, every great business starts with an idea, but it's persistence, strategy, and smart risk taking that turn it into reality. So if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. It really helps us grow and bring you more amazing guests. So stay curious, stay driven, and keep taking steps toward your version of success. Until next time, keep going and keep growing. Bye.